The blaze began quietly, merely a whisper in the wilderness, unnoticed and unseen by all. Deep within the woods it grew, catching everyone off guard. By the time the news broke, it was too late. Social media, phone calls, and news channels were abuzz, each broadcasting the enormous flames that had seemingly erupted out of nowhere. The harsh, dry wind drove the fire relentlessly, devouring forests, wildlife, and entire neighborhoods in its path. While panic ensued as people scrambled to save their belongings and loved ones, Elon Musk remained composed. Seated in his office, the pioneer of space travel, electric vehicles, and AI observed the chaos unfold on his screen. While others speculated about the origins and rapid spread of the fire and discussed strategies to combat it, Musk focused not on the flames but on the data. He noted peculiar patterns and irregularities in the fire's behavior, patterns that others had overlooked. "It's not what they think," he whispered, more to himself than anyone, as he delved deeper into the analysis on his tablet. Suddenly interrupted by an aide urging him to address the media, Musk remained unflinching. He rose, his gaze fixed out the window at the literal and metaphorical firestorm outside. Decisively, he instructed his team to convene. "We're not just going to watch this happen," he asserted, cutting through the tension with his resolve. Minutes later, Musk was airborne, en route to the fire's epicenter, his mind buzzing with theories. The unusual patterns in the fire's spread hinted at something sinister. Perhaps this was no ordinary wildfire, but the onset of a far greater threat. As the plane ascended above the smoky veil, Musk couldn't ignore the nagging feeling of stepping into an unprecedented storm. Back in the control room, as the world watched the disaster unfold, Musk wasn't just another spectator. He was steps ahead, strategizing his next move. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with your location. This story could very well spark a new beginning. What pushes you forward when the going gets tough? He pondered aloud. Like any wildfire in California, it began unnoticed, a small flicker within the brittle brush, a mere glow visible only to those nearby. But propelled by an unforgiving wind, the fire quickly became a catastrophic force, a towering inferno sweeping across the land. Panic reigned as people evacuated, while overhead, helicopters and planes battled the blaze. The media broadcasted live, the fire's orange hues against the horizon, smoke rising like a massive, choking cloud. Yet in the midst of chaos, Elon Musk was calm, sitting at Tesla HQ, browsing through live feeds. Replacing his usual restless vigor was a focused calmness. He wasn't just observing the flames or the media frenzy. He was looking at something deeper, underlying the crisis. Fires don't spread this fast, he thought, realizing there was something unusual about this fire. It wasn't behaving like typical wildfires. There was a method to its madness. As the fire spread with calculated precision, Musk's thoughts raced. He scrutinized data from his SpaceX and Tesla engineers, who were already tracking the blaze with satellites. The fire's progression defied natural patterns, leaping in inexplicable ways. "Elon, the team needs your input on the fire mitigation strategy," his assistant interjected, but Musk was preoccupied, his gaze fixed on the screen, deciphering the flickering data. Something was amiss. What if this isn't just a natural disaster? What if it's controlled, he pondered, instructing his team to deploy to the front line for a closer inspection. "I need to see this from every angle," he demanded, urgency lacing his voice. Resolved, he stood. "We're missing something. Get the jet ready." Soon, Musk was flying toward the heart of the inferno, the raging fire clearly visible below, each flicker a piece of a puzzle he was determined to solve. To him, the view mattered little compared to the data, the details that were escaping notice. He had this nagging feeling that everyone was looking in the wrong direction. The fire was not merely a natural occurrence. It was too precise, too deliberate. As the jet sliced through the sky, Elon Musk's mind was racing. His thoughts were not only on the fire itself, but on what might be behind it. Could this be the start of something bigger? His heart thrummed with a familiar adrenaline rush that came when he spotted an opportunity, a chance to think outside the box and make a difference. Back at Tesla and SpaceX, the teams were pooling all their resources, scanning for any technological anomalies that might explain the fire's unnatural spread. But Elon was convinced there was more at play. The patterns he had observed over the years were too significant to dismiss as mere coincidence. As the plane approached the fire zone, Elon's grip on the armrest tightened. He wasn't fearful of the flames. Rather, he almost relished the challenge. Yet, this disaster felt different. Elon Musk, a pioneer in space travel, electric vehicles, and AI, was aware of something the public was not. Sometimes the most significant problems are those that go unnoticed, the ones that everyone else overlooks. What had everyone missed? Elon Musk's story had never been straightforward. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, he grew up far from the Silicon Valley scene he would eventually dominate. His childhood was a mix of isolation and curiosity. He wasn't like the other kids, often withdrawn, engrossed in books or fervently tinkering with electronics. Even then, a fire burned within him, a drive to understand the workings of things and why they failed. It wasn't just his intellect that distinguished him, but how he viewed the world. To Elon, problems weren't just obstacles, they were opportunities to transform reality. His early life was shaped by his relationship with his father, Elon Musk, a brilliant but troubled man who often clashed with young Elon. Their relationship was complex, filled with both admiration and resentment. Errol was a visionary in his own right, but his stern and unforgiving nature left indelible marks on Elon. In contrast, his mother, May Musk, was strong, independent, and supportive, tirelessly working to provide for her family. Although Elon wasn't always expressive, he drew immense strength from her, inheriting her belief that anything was achievable, even in adversity. Despite the differences in his parents' approaches to life, Elon harbored dreams that transcended his circumstances. At 17, he left South Africa, convinced his future was beyond his birthplace. His initial years in Canada and then the US were marked by near poverty, relentless work, and boundless ambition. Musk attended Queen's University in Ontario, but it wasn't until his transfer to the University of Pennsylvania that the foundations of his future empire began to solidify. Elon stood out from his peers. He was disinterested in typical college life, fraternities, parties, or social circles. He was captivated by ideas, the future of technology, space, and energy. His determination matched his intellect. He saw a stagnating world and believed that if he could make enough people listen, he could alter it. His ambition wasn't just to amass wealth. He aimed to make history. By 24, he had left Stanford to launch his first company, Zip2, which he sold for nearly $300 million just 4 years later. The thrill for him wasn't the money, but the ability to create something transformative. His next venture, X.com, which later became PayPal, was a further step towards his ultimate goal of leaving a lasting legacy. But it was through SpaceX, Tesla, and SolarCity that Musk truly began to realize his vision. He wasn't merely producing products, he was crafting the future. His goals to colonize other planets, develop sustainable energy solutions, and revolutionize transportation propelled him forward, even against formidable challenges. Yet, as Musk had learned, success came with its price. The pressure was immense, the stakes even greater. His relentless dedication often strained his personal life, particularly his relationships, leading to brief marriages and a family life filled with highs and lows. But despite the personal sacrifices, his resolve remained unshaken. Through every failure, setback, and personal crisis, one thing stood firm: Musk's relentless drive. The fire within him was insatiable, fueling his journey towards his most formidable challenge yet. Now, as the wildfire continued its destructive path, Elon Musk was poised to confront a new type of crisis, one that would test not just his intellect but the very essence of his character. He was certain this was no mere accident. It was the start of something far more perilous, and he was determined to uncover the truth. As his private jet cut through the skies towards the Inferno's core, the reality of the crisis began to dawn on him. This wildfire wasn't just ravaging the landscape, it was revealing the inadequacies in the systems that people depended on for safety. Firefighting techniques, satellite mapping, and emergency response measures were all failing against the disaster's magnitude and velocity. Elon had always taken pride in his ability to view problems from unique perspectives, and his mind was now in high gear. The fire's rapid spread defied expert predictions. It was not behaving like a typical wildfire. It moved quicker, leaped obstacles, and burned with an intensity unseen in standard fires. More alarmingly, it seemed to alter its path spontaneously, thwarting firefighting efforts at every turn. Musk's teams at Tesla and SpaceX were analyzing data from satellites, drones, and weather stations, yet they encountered constant obstacles. The data was fragmented and incomplete, akin to assembling a puzzle with missing pieces. "This goes beyond a mere technological failure," Musk observed, peering out the jet's window as it descended towards the fire zone. "We're missing the bigger picture. This fire wasn't caused by lightning or a stray campfire. There's something else at play here." His assistant, tuning into his discussions, chimed in with the latest fire spread data, yet no clear explanation for its erratic behavior emerged. "Perhaps it's the dry conditions or the winds. They're perfect for spreading flames," she suggested. Elon shook his head dismissively. "No, it's not the winds. This fire is behaving unnaturally. We need to dig deeper." The jet landed on a small airstrip near the fire's edge, and Musk's team was quick to deploy, armed with advanced fire mapping technology and drones. They headed straight for the fire's front line. The scale of the fire was daunting, but it was the precision in its movement that was truly alarming. It was as though some unseen force was directing the flames. As they neared the zone, the heat was overwhelming, the air thick with smoke, and the surrounding silence was punctuated only by the distant crackling of fire. Musk's mind raced with the data his team had gathered. While not a fire expert, he knew technology well enough to recognize when something didn't add up. "There's something peculiar about this fire's spread," he noted, standing beside a fire expert from a local department. "These patterns, they don't align with typical wildfire behavior." The fire expert, a seasoned veteran, looked skeptical but intrigued. "What are you suggesting, Mr. Musk?" Elon's gaze sharpened. "I'm not entirely sure yet, but this isn't just a natural occurrence. There's a design to it, a purpose." The expert was doubtful, shaking his head. "I don't know about that. Fires don't need a purpose. They just burn." Elon didn't bother to argue. He was accustomed to skepticism, to his ideas being dismissed as fanciful or improbable. Yet, he was convinced of one thing. This fire was anything but random. It was too precise, too controlled. As they delved deeper into the fire zone, subtle signs became apparent, alterations in the terrain that seemed engineered to direct the fire along a specific path. Trees were cut in such a way that they should have acted as fire breaks, yet the fire defied these barriers, leaping over them as if following a preordained route. Musk's suspicions deepened. The implications of his observations were profound. He turned to his team, his voice low, driven by a mix of concern and determination, ready to delve further into the mystery. "We urgently need more data. I believe we're dealing with something that goes beyond a natural disaster. This could be sabotage, a deliberate manipulation of the fire," Elon stated, his voice imbued with resolve. One of his engineers, eyebrows raised, questioned sabotage. How could someone manipulate a fire like this? Elon's reply was firm. "That's exactly what I intend to find out." He wasn't certain who might be responsible or their motives, but the accumulating evidence pointed to something sinister. There were too many irregularities, too many inconsistencies in how the fire behaved, indications that someone with the necessary means, technology, and knowledge was orchestrating it. As the fire roared in the background, Elon's focus shifted to the larger issue at hand, identifying the culprit and understanding their motives. Standing on the scorched earth, feeling the intense heat radiate like a furnace, Elon's mind raced to piece together the unusual behavior of the wildfire. There was no doubt in his mind now. This was not a mere accident. This fire was being controlled. But by whom, and for what purpose? From his early days of tinkering with computers to his ventures at Tesla and SpaceX, Elon had always managed to discern patterns where others saw disorder. This fire was no exception. Buried deep within the data his team had collected was a clue, a key to unraveling the mystery. As the fire expert detailed the challenges they faced, Elon's attention drifted. He was preoccupied with the peculiar shifts in the fire's movement. It didn't adhere to the natural terrain, nor did it behave like a typical wildfire. It displayed the precision of an engineered attack, and that realization unnerved him. Interrupting the expert's explanation, Elon inquired, "You mentioned the satellite feed. Have you noticed anything unusual with the data?" The expert hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the notion of a technological cause for the fire. "It's just the usual: wind speeds, heat readings, humidity levels. Nothing out of the ordinary." Elon's response was sharp, insistent. "No, look again. Something isn't adding up. Where did the fire start?" The expert pointed towards a nearby canyon, where earlier a spark from a power line had supposedly ignited the brush. But Elon knew the fire hadn't behaved as expected. It had spread too quickly, too precisely. "I think it's time to investigate the starting point," he suggested, leading the team towards the canyon. As they passed charred trees and scorched earth, Elon's suspicions intensified. This fire hadn't been sparked at random. It had been meticulously planned. Upon reaching the canyon, Elon scanned the area. The ground was scorched, but telltale signs indicated prior human activity: footprints, an oddly placed fuel container, and unusual scorch marks. Crouching down, Elon examined the ground more closely. This isn't right. Whoever set this fire knew exactly where and when to strike. The fire expert, kneeling beside him, looked at the evidence, perplexed. "You think someone's behind this?" "That someone did this on purpose." Elon's gaze turned towards the horizon, where the fire cast an eerie glow across the landscape. "I'm certain of it," he affirmed. Standing, he pulled out his phone and called his team back at Tesla. "I need you to check for any unusual satellite readings from this area, and look into recent reports about fire anomalies in this region. I have a feeling we're dealing with something much bigger than just a fire." Within minutes, data began flowing in, satellite images and sensor readings that were anything but typical. A distinct pattern emerged. The fire's rapid spread was being facilitated by something more sophisticated than natural elements. One of his engineers sent a notification: "Elon, you need to see this. We've found something odd in the satellite data from earlier this week. It appears to be a signal." "A signal?" Elon repeated, puzzled. "From where?" "Not from Earth," the engineer replied, his voice laden with uncertainty. "It's coming from the atmosphere near the fire's origin. We think it's some sort of transmission, possibly a targeted signal." Elon's heart raced. A transmission meant it could be a directed energy weapon or some type of controlled signal influencing the fire's precise spread. The implications were profound. If someone was using such technology to manipulate the fire, this could mark the onset of something catastrophic. While Elon typically avoided jumping to conclusions without solid evidence, all signs pointed to a stark reality. This fire was no mere accident. It was a deliberate attack. Turning to his team, a grim resolve in his eyes, he declared, "We need to get back to base. This changes everything." As they headed back, the gravity of the situation weighed heavily. This was no longer just about controlling a wildfire. It was about confronting a threat to the very fabric of society, a threat potentially orchestrated by someone capable of manipulating nature itself. Who had such power, and why? Elon's thoughts spiraled back to one haunting question. What if this was just the beginning? Back at Tesla's field base, the team crowded around multiple screens, analyzing the data Elon had requested. The images and readings from the satellite feeds were more bizarre than anyone could have anticipated. The pattern of the wildfire's spread was starting to resemble less the work of nature and more something orchestrated, guided by an external force. As the team delved deeper into the data, Elon stood in the corner, deep in thought. The signal discovered by his engineer was troubling. It wasn't just any random transmission. It appeared to be coming from high in the atmosphere near the fire's epicenter. What kind of technology could cause a fire to behave in such a manner? It bore the characteristics of a highly targeted energy weapon, capable of manipulating the environment with precision. Elon's mind raced with the possibilities of such technologies. But they were always just theoretical, part of some distant future scenario. The fact that such technologies could be in use now, in the present, was deeply unsettling. If someone had the capability to control the weather or manipulate fire with such precision, what else were they capable of? "Elon, you're going to want to see this," called out one of his senior engineers, snapping him back to reality. The engineer gestured towards the screen displaying a map of the fire's path, now overlaid with satellite data. A series of precise blips marked certain points where the fire's spread coincided with unusual patterns. "These points here, they're too precise," the engineer continued. "We've monitored similar fires, but nothing like this. It's as if the fire is being deliberately shifted at specific intervals." Elon leaned closer, examining the data. "What are you suggesting?" "That someone is directing the fire's movements." The engineer nodded affirmatively. "Exactly, but the question remains, who?" A shiver of apprehension ran down Elon's spine. The notion that someone was actively controlling the wildfire was not just terrifying. It suggested that the event was no mere accident but a calculated orchestration. "There's one more thing," another engineer interjected. "The signal we found, it's coming from an encrypted source, but it's oddly familiar. We've tracked it back to a region in the Pacific Ocean. It's connected to something called Project Helios." "Helios," Elon repeated, his brow furrowing. "What is Project Helios?" The engineer hesitated. "It's a research program that's been under the radar for a while, linked to some of the most advanced energy research in the world, but it's extremely classified. What we're seeing might be a military-grade energy weapon designed for environmental manipulation." Elon stood motionless, his thoughts racing. Project Helios wasn't just a name. It was a program rumored to exist for years, a cutting-edge initiative meant to manipulate the planet's energy systems. But using such technology to control fire and direct it to specific locations was a terrifying leap into unknown territory. He made a decisive call. "We need to learn more about Project Helios, trace its funding, its backers, and the individuals involved. This could be larger than any of us anticipated." Elon's mind turned to SpaceX, where technology capable of reaching beyond Earth's atmosphere might provide some insight into this mysterious signal. If Project Helios was involved, it could involve satellite-based weaponry or climate control systems operating from space, technologies that, in the wrong hands, could alter the course of the world. As he returned to his private jet, a sense of urgency drove him. The fire was merely one piece of a much larger puzzle, a puzzle he was determined to solve before it spiraled further out of control. Hours later, as his jet sliced through the night sky toward a hidden military facility in the Pacific where Project Helios was rumored to be active. Elon knew time was of the essence. Every second counted, and every piece of data they uncovered brought them closer to understanding who was behind the fire and, crucially, why. Approaching the facility, the gravity of the situation became increasingly clear. This was no longer just a wildfire. It was a weapon, potentially poised for use again on a larger scale. As they neared the facility, a message from his team at Tesla arrived. The encrypted data from the signal had been partially decrypted. Elon, the message read, "We've identified a connection between Project Helios and a group of international investors backed by some of the biggest names in global energy and defense. But there's more. A corporation with ties to AI development. It all seems interconnected." The mention of AI sent a surge of adrenaline through Elon. AI was a field he had always closely monitored, particularly for its potential misuse. If an AI system was controlling this fire, they were not just dealing with a few rogue individuals, but facing a much larger threat. An AI system with access to advanced environmental manipulation technology could have catastrophic consequences. But even as he processed this information, Elon felt he was on the verge of a breakthrough. The answers he sought were just ahead. As the plane landed on a remote airstrip near the facility, the weight of the moment was palpable. They were about to enter a web of secrets, a hidden world of high-stakes power where fire was just the beginning. Stepping off the jet, his boots crunching against the gravel, the cold night air filled with only the hum of the engines. Ahead, the lights of the hidden military facility flickered, shrouded by dense forest. This was no ordinary base. It was a nexus of cutting-edge technology and shadowy agendas, a place where secrets were kept not just for national security but for global power. He had long understood that the world was full of contradictions, dreams of a better future mingled with nightmares of unchecked ambition. This, however, was something entirely different. The stakes had been raised. Whoever controlled the fire, whoever had created Project Helios, had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. Elon's mind was alert, focused, as his team, experts in satellite technology, AI, and energy systems, quickly set up their operations. They were prepared, but the deeper question lingered. Who was behind all of this? As they approached the facility's entrance, a figure emerged from the shadows, tall, in a military-style uniform, exuding authority. Elon instinctively recognized him, though they had never met face to face. "Mr. Musk," the man said in a deep, gravelly voice, "I thought you might be coming." Elon's brow furrowed. "You knew?" The man nodded. "We've been monitoring the situation for weeks. I'm Colonel Jason Hill, representing the High Security Division overseeing Project Helios. I'm sure you have questions. But I believe you've already started uncovering things that you shouldn't have." Elon's eyes narrowed, clearly displeased with surprises. "I didn't come here to play games, Colonel. This fire is only the beginning. It's not just a wildfire, it's a weapon, and I'm not leaving until I understand exactly what you're doing with it." Colonel Hill chuckled darkly. "You're in over your head, Musk, but I respect your determination. You're correct about one thing. This fire, this event, is no accident. It's part of a larger agenda, one that extends beyond what you could possibly imagine. And believe me, there's a lot you don't know." Elon's patience was thinning. "Then start explaining now," he demanded. Colonel Hill didn't flinch. Instead, he gestured for Elon and his team to follow him into the depths of the facility. Inside, the atmosphere was charged. Walls lined with screens displayed real-time data on fires, weather systems, and atmospheric conditions. It was clear this was no ordinary research center. It was a command hub for something far more grandiose. As they traversed a sterile corridor, Hill spoke again, his voice softer yet still authoritative. "Project Helios isn't just about energy or weather manipulation. It's about control. Control of the environment, control of resources, and ultimately, control over global power dynamics. The fires you've observed are a test, a demonstration of our capabilities. The next step is much larger. Elon's pulse quickened. What do you mean, the next step? You're using fires as weapons? You're manipulating the very fabric of nature for your own ends? This isn't just some theoretical project. You're playing with lives. Colonel Hill turned, his expression unreadable. It's not about playing with lives, Musk. It's about creating a new world order. We've reached a point where we need to adapt to the changing climate. We can't wait for the world to change. We will force it to change. If that means triggering natural disasters or controlling ecosystems to make that happen, so be it. Elon was seething. This wasn't merely corporate greed or military ambition. It was a deeper philosophy of manipulation on a global scale. The idea of using fire to control the weather, to reshape the environment for strategic gain, was more terrifying than any technology he had ever encountered. You think you can control the planet like this? Elon retorted sharply. What happens when this technology falls into the wrong hands? When people like you misuse it? Colonel Hill didn't flinch. The world has always been controlled by those who can harness power, and now we have the power to reshape it. If you're asking whether we've considered the consequences, yes, we have. But we believe the ends justify the means. This is about survival, Musk. Global survival. Elon could feel a cold dread creeping up his spine. This wasn't just a rogue project. It was the foundation of something far more dangerous. As long as Project Helios was operational, the world would be at the mercy of whoever controlled it. Whoever controlled the fires, controlled the future. The team was led into a large control room where a massive screen displayed a detailed map of the globe, pinpointing various locations where natural events, wildfires, hurricanes, droughts, were either currently occurring or predicted to occur. These weren't typical weather events. They were unprecedented anomalies, far too precise. We've used advanced AI algorithms to predict and even influence natural disasters, Hill explained, pointing to various locations on the map. These are the areas we've been testing the fire manipulation technology on. The plan is eventually to be able to control specific zones of the planet in ways that benefit certain global powers. Elon felt his stomach churn. This wasn't just about managing resources. It was about domination, control of fire, control of water, control of air. This was a world where everything, even nature, was a weapon. What happens if we stop you? Elon asked, his voice low but resolute. Hill's smile didn't reach his eyes. It's too late for that. The project is already operational on a global scale. All you're doing is chasing a shadow. You won't be able to stop it. Elon's hands tightened into fists. I'm not here to stop a shadow. I'm here to stop you. As he processed the gravity of the situation, Elon knew he stood at a crossroads. The world had already been irrevocably altered, and Project Helios was only the beginning of what could be a new era of environmental warfare. But there was still time to fight back, time to expose what was happening, to rally the right forces before it was too late. As the tension in the room escalated, Elon's mind raced with plans. But one thing was clear. If he was going to stop Project Helios, he would need more than just technology. He would need to take the fight directly to those who believed they controlled the future. And that fight was only just beginning. The air inside the facility was dense, oppressive, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Elon's thoughts swirled as Hill's words echoed in his mind. Project Helios wasn't an isolated incident. It was the start of a new kind of global power structure, built not on oil or military might, but on the very elements that sustain life on Earth. Elon had spent his life developing technologies that could change the world, but this was something entirely different. The stakes had just been raised, and whoever controlled the fire, whoever had initiated Project Helios, had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. Elon's mind was sharp, focused. His team, experts in satellite technology, AI, and energy systems, quickly set up their operations. They were prepared, but the deeper questions still lingered in his mind. Who was behind all of this? As they approached the entrance of the facility, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall figure in a military-style uniform, exuding an air of authority. Elon instinctively recognized the man, even though they had never met face to face. "Mr. Musk," the man said in a deep, gravelly voice, "I thought you might be coming." Elon's brow furrowed. "You knew?" The man nodded. "We've been monitoring the situation for weeks. I'm Colonel Jason Hill, representing the High Security Division overseeing Project Helios. I'm sure you have questions." But it had never been like this. He never intended to use power to dominate or control. It had always been about creating new opportunities, expanding possibilities. Yet now, standing in this dark facility, the full magnitude of the situation was dawning on him. The very scenario he had feared was unfolding. The world was being reshaped by those who believed they could dominate nature itself. Elon had always seen technology as a force for good, a tool to solve problems and advance humanity. However, it was now evident that some viewed it as a weapon, a means to tip the scales of power in their favor. For the first time, Elon was not just thinking about business or space exploration. He was contemplating survival. As Colonel Hill led them deeper into the heart of the facility, Elon exchanged worried glances with his team. The fear reflected in their eyes matched his own, but it was not fear that would deter them. It was determination. They were not here merely to uncover the truth. They were here to halt this insanity before it could spread any further. "Follow me," Hill commanded, his voice sharp as he guided them through another corridor. This one was different. High-tech equipment lined the walls, some of which even Elon, with his extensive knowledge, did not recognize. Ahead was a control room, and beyond that, the core of Project Helios. As they neared the door, Hill paused and turned to Elon. "You're not going to like what's behind this door," he said, his tone almost sympathetic. "But I believe you're smart enough to understand that there's no turning back now. You've seen too much." Elon stood resolute, his thoughts racing. "I'm not here for your sympathy, Colonel. I'm here to ensure this ends." With a resigned sigh, Hill pressed a button on the wall, and the heavy door slid open. Inside, a vast array of screens filled the space, each displaying live feeds from around the world. Wildfires, hurricanes, flooding, and droughts, all caused by the manipulation of natural forces. A massive map of the Earth covered one wall, pinpointing regions where the next events were likely to occur. "This is it," Hill said, stepping aside. "This is the future. We've been able to predict, influence, and now control these events with precision. The next step is to expand our reach, to become the dominant force in global power dynamics. These environmental shifts are just the beginning. Soon, we'll have the power to direct them at will." Elon stared at the map, his eyes narrowing. Every disaster, every catastrophe displayed was a tool, a weapon in the hands of those who believed they could play God. But the more he observed the screens, the more he realized something was amiss. The fires were too precise, the storms too timely. This was not merely an assault on nature. It was a coordinated effort, and the goal was not only to manipulate the environment but also to manipulate people. "Who's funding this?" Elon demanded, his voice steady yet intense. Hill hesitated, but for only a moment. "You already know the answer to that. The same people who've always pulled the strings, energy moguls, defense contractors, tech giants. And now, we're working with AI to take it to the next level." Elon's mind flashed back to the signal his team had intercepted, the one linked to AI. He considered the implications of using artificial intelligence to control the weather, the environment, entire ecosystems. It wasn't just a tool for destruction. It could be used for mass control. AI, Elon muttered, realization dawning. Of course, it's always the next frontier. But you've made one fatal mistake. Hill raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. What's that? You've underestimated humanity's ability to fight back, Elon declared, his voice firm. You think you can control fire, control the weather, control the planet, but what you fail to understand is that people don't give up when they're pushed to the edge. You've left us no choice but to stop you. Hill's expression darkened. You think you can stop this? It's already in motion. The AI systems we've deployed are beyond your control, Musk. The moment you leave this room, your efforts will be futile. Elon wasn't listening any longer. He was already formulating a plan. It wouldn't be easy or quick, but it was possible. He had the tools, the knowledge, and the determination to succeed. The key was the AI. If he could infiltrate the system, crack its code, he could turn the tables. You're wrong, Elon retorted. I have a plan, and I will stop this, but it's going to require everything we've got. As Hill glared at him, clearly not grasping the depth of Elon's resolve, Elon quickly turned to his team. They had arrived prepared, aware that the odds were against them. They understood the situation, but they needed access to the heart of the system where the AI operated. This is it, Elon whispered to his closest engineers. We have one shot at this. We need to get to the core of their AI network, the system controlling the disasters. If we can break it, we can stop Project Helios. The tension in the room was palpable as the team nodded, ready to do whatever it took. Elon had always believed that technology could be the key to humanity's future, but not like this, not when it was being used as a weapon. With a final glance at Hill, Elon and his team rushed toward the central control hub, where the AI systems orchestrating the chaos were housed. Elon's fingers hovered over the keyboard as his team worked in unison to breach the firewalls protecting the system. He could feel the weight of the moment, the gravity of what was at stake. The world outside depended on them. As the minutes ticked by, the countdown in Elon's mind accelerated. The data was pouring in, revealing the scope of Project Helios. It was far worse than he had feared. But they were close, so very close to breaking the code. The future hung in the balance, and Elon Musk was determined not to let anyone snatch that future away. The servers hummed loudly as he and his team huddled around the central control hub, their eyes fixed on the screen. Time was running out. Colonel Hill and his team were aware of their presence now, and they would not allow them to tamper with the AI systems for much longer. Elon needed to act swiftly. Every second was crucial. Any luck yet? Elon asked, urgency sharpening his voice. One of his engineers, a young woman named Sarah, was feverishly working at her terminal. Her fingers raced across the keyboard, sweat beading on her forehead. We've managed to bypass some of the external security layers, she reported, her voice steady despite the mounting pressure. But their firewalls are unlike anything I've ever encountered. This isn't just some ordinary system. It's designed to stop people like us. Elon nodded grimly. He had anticipated difficulties, but he also knew that if they didn't penetrate the system now, it might soon be too late. The AI was adapting faster than they could keep up. If Project Helios remained under its control, the entire world could fall under its sway. Keep pushing, Elon urged. We don't have much time. Sarah's face was a mask of concentration. I'm trying to access the core systems, but they're using quantum encryption. It's like fighting a ghost. But I think we found a backdoor. If I can just... Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Elon looked up, sensing something amiss. What was that? We're being locked out, Sarah replied, her fingers hovering mid-air. The AI is adapting. It's countering our moves. Elon's stomach tightened with anxiety. He realized they had been discovered. Project Helios was a complex, multi-layered system, and if they had any hope of disabling it, they needed to prevent the AI from further adapting. "Sarah, we need a new strategy," Elon said, his mind racing. "We can't keep attacking the firewalls head-on. We need to outsmart it." Before Sarah could respond, Elon turned to another engineer, Adam. "Can we create a decoy signal? Something to distract the AI long enough for Sarah to breach the core system?" Adam's eyes widened. "A decoy? It's risky, but if we can generate a signal strong enough to appear as though we're attacking from a different location, we might be able to throw it off. The AI will shift its defenses." "Do it," Elon commanded, his voice slicing through the tension. "Give Sarah the time she needs to finish the job." As Adam worked on creating the decoy, Elon kept his gaze fixed on the central screen, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. He understood that the system wasn't just a piece of technology. It was evolving, learning from every attack they made. However, the AI had one critical flaw. It had been designed by humans, and humans, no matter how brilliant, always left vulnerabilities. The decoy was soon ready. Adam pressed a button, and the air crackled with energy as a false signal mimicked their team's actions. A bright pulse illuminated the screen, drawing the AI's attention. For a moment, everything went still. The hum of the servers seemed to pause, then a soft beep echoed in the room. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard once more. "I'm in," she shouted, relief and triumph mixing in her voice. "I'm inside the core systems," she announced. Elon exhaled, but there was no time for celebration. "Do it, Sarah. Shut it down." A tense, long silence followed as Sarah typed furiously, navigating through layers of encrypted data. The AI was fighting back, its code shifting and adapting as quickly as she made her moves. But they were right at the heart of Project Helios. Elon's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the screens displaying ongoing fires, storms, and floods, all still being manipulated by the AI systems. If Sarah could disable the core, the balance would shift, the systems would falter, and the global manipulation would cease. But it was more complicated than merely flipping a switch. They were battling an intelligence that could anticipate their every move. "Almost there," Sarah muttered under her breath, wiping sweat from her brow. Her determination was palpable. Just one more layer of encryption to go. The screens flickered again, and a loud alarm blared through the room. "It's adapting. It's already countering us," Adam cursed. "We're too late. We need to override the system now." Elon shouted, his voice taut with urgency. "Sarah, you can do this. Break the last layer. We're running out of time." Sarah's fingers danced over the keys, the adrenaline coursing through her as the seconds ticked down. Elon felt the immense weight of the moment bearing down on them. One wrong move, one mistake, and they would lose everything. Then, a soft click echoed through the room. The screens went black. The alarm ceased. For a moment, there was silence, the tension almost unbearable. Then, the screens flickered back to life, displaying a map of the world. But this time, the areas that had once blazed with fires, storms, and chaos were now dark. The AI's control had been severed. The fires that had once raged across the globe were now slowly being contained. The artificial storms were dissipating. "We did it," Sarah breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. "We stopped it." Elon stood there, staring at the screen, the full weight of their success slowly sinking in. But the battle was far from over. They had won this round, but myriad questions remained unanswered. Who had funded this project? Who else was involved? And most crucially, who would seek to wield this power next? Elon turned to his team, his voice steady yet resolute. "This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. We need to expose what's happened here and prevent it from ever happening again." Despite his words, a feeling of unease settled over him. They had disrupted Project Helios, but he knew that control over nature, over the elements, wouldn't be easily relinquished. The people behind this wouldn't just give up. They couldn't. Elon Musk understood that if humanity was to survive this new age of environmental manipulation, they would need to confront not only the technology but also the very people who wielded it. The world seemed quieter now, but Elon wasn't deceived. The victory over Project Helios felt like the first step in a much longer journey, one that would take him far beyond the walls of this high-tech facility and into a battle far from over. The AI was down, but the people behind it, those who had orchestrated this global manipulation, were still out there, watching, waiting for their next opportunity. Sarah, Adam, and the rest of the team gathered around him, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and triumph. It had been a long, grueling process, but they had accomplished what many thought impossible. They had dismantled a weapon capable of altering the planet's climate. "Is it over?" Adam asked, his voice cautious as he glanced at the now stable screens. Elon paused before responding. "It's over for now, but I have a feeling this is just the beginning." The facility was eerily quiet now, the constant hum of the servers that had once filled the room now silenced. For a brief moment, the team allowed themselves to breathe, to process what they had just achieved. The relief, however, was short-lived. Elon's mind was besieged with questions that had plagued him from the start. Who was pulling the strings behind Project Helios? He couldn't shake the feeling that they were dealing with something much larger than a rogue military operation. Whoever had funded this, whoever had designed it, had the resources to eliminate anyone who stood in their way. And he knew from experience that those who controlled power on this scale rarely took defeat lightly. Elon paced the room, his mind in overdrive. He needed answers, and the only way to get them was to dig deeper. "Sarah, Adam," he said, his voice suddenly charged with purpose, "we need to track the origins of this project. I don't care who we have to contact, but I need to know who is behind this, where the funding came from. This didn't start as just some military initiative. There's something bigger at play here." Sarah, who had looked exhausted just moments before, straightened up at his command. "We've already started scanning the data, Elon. We've got access to the project's internal files, but it's all encrypted. Whoever did this is covering their tracks." "Keep working on it," Elon instructed, his tone firm. "We need to find out who's really in charge here." The days that followed were a blur of research, encryption cracking, and endless sleepless nights. Elon and his team worked relentlessly, their eyes glued to their screens as they sifted through layers of data, trying to piece together the puzzle. The AI had been a powerful force, but the true danger lay in the hands of those who had created it. It wasn't until one night, when Elon was about to call it quits, that a breakthrough came. The files began to open one by one, revealing connections that sent a chill down his spine. Names, corporations, government contracts, and at the center of it all, a name he hadn't expected to see, Julian Steele. Elon froze, staring at the name on the screen. Steele was a billionaire tech magnate, a shadowy figure who had built his empire on the back of cutting-edge AI and robotics. He had always operated under the radar, with rumors swirling about his involvement in several high-stakes, ethically questionable projects. But to think that someone like him was behind Project Helios, that was a different level of danger. "Who is Julian Steele?" Adam asked, his voice laced with disbelief. "He's one of the richest men in the world," Elon replied, his voice steady despite the shock he felt. "And he's known for pushing the limits of technology, no matter the cost. But this is something else. He's been working with governments, military contractors, and private defense companies for years, all under the guise of philanthropy. Elon ran a hand through his hair, trying to make sense of the information. He's been building the future, but on his own terms. And now, it seems he's playing with fire, literally. The more they dug into Steele's connections, the clearer it became that Project Helios was only the tip of the iceberg. Steele wasn't just developing technology for climate manipulation. He was working on a far-reaching plan that spanned the globe, one that involved using AI to control not just the weather but entire populations. By controlling the elements, he could control the economy, the flow of resources, and, most importantly, people's lives. But why? What was his ultimate goal? "We need to confront him," Sarah said, her voice unwavering. "We've got the proof now. You can take him down." Elon shook his head. "It's not that simple. Steele is too powerful. He has too many resources. We can't just walk into his office and ask him to shut it down." "Then what do we do?" Adam asked. Elon turned to face his team, his expression hardening with resolve. "We expose him. We make the world see what he's doing. We pull back the curtain and let everyone know that someone like Steele is out there, playing God with our planet. But we'll need more than just proof. We'll need the right allies, the right platform, and we'll need to be ready for a fight." As they began formulating a plan to expose Steele's operation, Elon knew they were stepping into dangerous territory. The billionaires, the government officials, the military contractors, they all played in the same circles. And now that they were on Steele's radar, there was no turning back. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that they were fighting not just for their own survival, but for that of the entire planet. But for the survival of everyone on the planet, if Steele had his way, the world would be nothing more than a chessboard of manipulated disasters, all controlled by a handful of elites who recognized no moral boundaries. And Elon Musk was not about to let that happen. The night felt endless, the ticking of the clock echoing in Elon's mind like a countdown. The research was done, the evidence was there, but now came the hardest part, the battle for control. Julian Steele thrived in the shadows, and exposing him meant going up against one of the most powerful networks in the world, one that spanned governments, military-industrial giants, and some of the most influential tech moguls. Elon paced the room, running through the options in his mind. The team had gathered a wealth of information, but none of it would matter unless they had a way to make Steele's actions public, through the right platform, the right timing, and, more importantly, the right partners. "We need leverage," Elon said, his voice low and deliberate. "We can't take Steele down alone. We need someone with the influence to push this story into the public eye." Sarah, who had been scanning the data on her laptop, looked up. "You're thinking about the media, aren't you?" Elon nodded. "Not just any media. We need someone who has the reach, the credibility, and the willingness to take on someone like Steele. Someone like the New York Times, or maybe even the UN." Adam frowned. "But they're all connected, Elon. Steele still has friends in all the right places. He could shut us down before we even get started." Elon's eyes narrowed. "We won't just expose the operation. We'll expose how deep the connections go, how many people have been involved in manipulating the weather, in manipulating the entire world's economy. When people see the truth, they'll have no choice but to act." The team spent the next few days working tirelessly. They reached out to journalists, environmental organizations, and even political figures who had been vocal about corporate influence on global affairs. Elon knew that to make an impact, they would need to show the world not just what Steele had been doing, but how it affected every single person on Earth. The plan was simple in theory. Leak a portion of the information they had uncovered, a sliver of the massive operation Steele had orchestrated. They would flood the media with the truth, leaving Steele nowhere to hide. But the more they thought about it, the more they realized how dangerous it would be. "Every move we make has to be calculated," Elon said, pacing again. "Steele has too many eyes on him. If we do this the wrong way, we could lose everything. We're already in too deep to back out, Sarah replied, her voice firm. If we don't act, he'll just keep going, keep manipulating everything in his path. We have to expose him now. Elon stopped and looked at his team. Their resolve was strong, but the uncertainty of what lay ahead weighed heavily on all of them. They couldn't afford to make a mistake. The stakes were too high. The day of the leak arrived. Elon and his team had carefully crafted a message, a call to action that would send shockwaves across the globe. They partnered with a few trusted journalists who had worked on stories that exposed corporate corruption in the past. The plan was to release the data in waves, each one providing irrefutable proof of Steele's involvement in manipulating the world's weather patterns, all while masking it as research and climate control for the greater good. As the first leak went live, the response was immediate. Media outlets picked up the story, and soon the hashtag Helios Exposed was trending worldwide. Elon watched the news feeds and social media threads pour in, his heart racing as the pieces of the puzzle finally clicked into place. The world was waking up to the truth. But as the story gained momentum, something unexpected happened. The narrative started to shift. Steele's network was powerful, yes, but it wasn't invincible. The AI system they had destroyed wasn't the only thing that held the project together. Steele had a team of PR experts, politicians, and tech moguls who were already working to counter the revelations. Within hours of the leak, Steele's camp had begun discrediting the information. They were flooding the news with misinformation, accusing Elon and his team of hacking, lying, and attempting to cause panic. They framed the whole thing as a massive misunderstanding, a glitch in the system, and blamed a rogue element within the organization. Elon wasn't surprised. This was exactly what he had expected. "They're turning the tables on us," Adam said, frustration evident in his voice as he scrolled through the countless news articles and social media posts dismissing the evidence. "They've already got people defending them, calling us out for false information." "We knew this would happen," Elon replied, his voice steady. But the battle wasn't over. They had won this round, but there were still countless questions left unanswered. Who had funded this project? Who else was involved? And most importantly, who would take advantage of this power next? Elon turned to his team, his voice steady but resolute. "This isn't the end. It's just the beginning. We need to expose what's happened here, stop it from ever happening again." But even as he spoke, a feeling of unease settled over him. They had disrupted Project Helios, but he knew that power like this, control over nature, control over the elements, wouldn't be easily contained. The people behind this wouldn't stop. They couldn't. Elon Musk knew that if humanity was going to survive this new age of environmental manipulation, they would have to confront not just the technology but the very people who wielded it. The world seemed quieter now, but Elon wasn't fooled. The victory over Project Helios felt like the first step in a much longer journey, one that would take him far beyond the walls of the high-tech facility and into a battle that was far from over. The AI was down, but the people behind it, the ones who had orchestrated this global manipulation, were still out there, watching, waiting for their next move. Sarah, Adam, and the rest of the team gathered around him, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and triumph. It had been a long, grueling process, but they had done what many thought impossible. They had dismantled a weapon capable of altering the very climate of the planet. "Is it over?" Adam asked, his voice cautious as he glanced at the now stable screens. Elon paused before responding. "It's over for now, but I have a feeling this is just the beginning." The facility was eerily quiet now, the hum of the servers that had once pulsed through the room silenced. For a brief moment, the team allowed themselves a moment to breathe, to process what they had just accomplished. The sense of relief, however, was short-lived. Elon's mind raced with the questions that had plagued him since the beginning. Who was pulling the strings behind Project Helios? He couldn't shake the feeling that they were dealing with something much bigger than a rogue military operation. Whoever had funded this, whoever had designed it, had the resources to wipe out anyone who stood in their way. And he knew from experience that people who controlled power on this scale rarely took defeat lightly. Elon paced the room, his mind in overdrive. He needed answers, and the only way to get them was to dig deeper. "Sarah, Adam," he said, his voice suddenly charged with purpose, "we need to track the origins of this project. I don't care who we have to contact, but I need to know who is behind this, where the funding came from. This didn't start as just some military initiative. There's something bigger at play here." Sarah, who had looked exhausted just moments before, straightened up at his command. "We've already started scanning the data, Elon. We've got access to the project's internal files, but it's all encrypted. Whoever did this is covering their tracks." "Keep working on it," Elon instructed, his tone firm. "We need to find out who's really in charge here." The days that followed were a blur of research, encryption cracking, and endless sleepless nights. Elon and his team worked relentlessly, their eyes glued to their screens as they sifted through layers of data, trying to piece together the puzzle. The AI had been a powerful force, but the true danger lay in the hands of those who had created it. But deep down, Elon knew this battle wasn't just against Steele, it was against the system he represented. Steele wasn't merely a man. He was the embodiment of a machine powered by unchecked power, technology, and manipulation. A machine designed to control the world from the shadows. Until that system was brought to its knees, this fight would never truly be over. Subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's the one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? ****. The brief calm after the cyber attack was deceptive. While Elon and his team had held their ground, they knew this was only the beginning. Steele's retaliation had been swift, aggressive, and calculated, a prelude to the full-scale counteroffensive they knew was coming. They were up against an adversary who thrived in secrecy, a man who wielded power like a weapon, and now they were fully in his crosshairs. "We're not just dealing with Steele anymore," Sarah said, breaking the tense silence as she stared at a fresh set of encrypted documents they had recovered. Her face was grim. "This is bigger than we thought. We've been poking at a system that goes far beyond just one man." Elon leaned over the documents she was scanning, his expression hardening. They were finally starting to see the true scope of Steele's network. It wasn't just corporate partners and military contractors. It was political leaders, industry giants, and high-ranking military officials. The more they uncovered, the more it felt like they were peeling back the layers of a vast global conspiracy. Adam, monitoring the escalating media coverage, spoke up. "The narrative is shifting. Steele's people are pulling every string to spin this in his favor. News outlets are backing him, calling us extremists. There's even talk of framing us for some of the fallout from Project Helios." Elon stood, his gaze fixed on the chaotic swirl of data on the screens in front of him. This isn't just Steele's fight anymore. He's become a symbol of something much larger, the unchecked power of a global elite that controls not just technology, but the flow of information, money, and influence. They've been playing the long game, setting the stage for a new world order where they pull the strings. "We need to dig deeper," Elon said, his voice quieter but laced with determination. "Steele isn't just a rogue player. He's a cog in a much larger machine, and we can't take it all down at once. This is going to take time. We're up against a system that's been built to thrive in the shadows." The team worked with renewed urgency, spending the next several days unearthing the key players behind Steele's empire, those who financed, protected, and empowered him. But the deeper they went, the more elusive their targets became. This wasn't just about weather manipulation or global control anymore. It was about power in its purest, most insidious form. Elon realized they couldn't expose this conspiracy the same way they had tackled Project Helios. This wasn't about dismantling one project or taking down one man. It was about unraveling an intricate web of control, one that would stop at nothing to maintain its grip on the world. The truth will be their undoing, Elon muttered as he pored over files, his mind racing. But how could they expose corruption on this scale without painting an enormous target on their backs? Then, unexpectedly, a new opportunity emerged. A whistleblower from within Steele's network reached out. At first, the message was cryptic, a small encrypted file that could have easily been dismissed as a decoy. But as Elon dug deeper, it became clear that the message was genuine. The source claimed to be part of a global think tank linked to Project Helios and other controversial initiatives. They had evidence of an even more insidious plan, one that went beyond climate manipulation and aimed straight at the heart of global governance. This could be it, Elon said, his voice calm but edged with anticipation. This could be the smoking gun we need. Elon, Sarah, and Adam immediately began verifying the whistleblower's claims. It was risky. Steele's people were undoubtedly monitoring their every move, but the potential was too significant to ignore. If the whistleblower's information was accurate, it was bigger than anything they'd uncovered so far. The plan began to take shape. They would expose Steele's true ambitions, not just his involvement in Project Helios, but his overarching plan to control the world itself. The evidence they had gathered so far was damning, but this new information would be the linchpin. "We need to be careful," Sarah cautioned as she sifted through the files. "The whistleblower's identity is still a mystery. If we're not cautious, we could expose them, and ourselves." "I know," Elon replied, his mind already racing ahead. The team prepared to go public with their findings, knowing this was their best chance to turn the tide. They had already proven Steele's role in Project Helios, but this new revelation would shatter any remaining illusions about his true intentions. Steele wasn't just trying to control the weather. He was orchestrating a plan to control the very systems that govern the planet. By manipulating the elements, he aimed to manipulate economies, governments, and entire populations. It wasn't just a grab for power. It was a bid to reshape the world in his image. As they finalized their strategy, Elon knew the risks were greater than ever. They weren't just challenging a man. They were challenging a system that thrived on secrecy, manipulation, and fear. And with every step forward, they moved deeper into dangerous territory. But Elon Musk had never been one to back down from a fight, especially one that could determine the future of humanity itself. This was no longer just about survival. It was about ensuring that the world would never again be at the mercy of those who sought to control it from the shadows. But they couldn't wait any longer. The clock was ticking. The world was watching, but so was Steele, and he wasn't the kind of adversary to sit idle. The whistleblower's documents painted a chilling picture. A shadow government operating outside international law, composed of the wealthiest and most powerful individuals on the planet. This wasn't just about weather manipulation. It was about setting the stage for a new global order, where they would wield ultimate control, unchallenged by any nation or institution. Elon and his team knew this was no longer just a fight for justice. It was a battle for the future, one where freedom and democracy were on the line. They were about to expose a system that had thrived for decades, hidden behind a facade of global politics and business. And with that revelation, they would become targets in a way they had never experienced before. "Are we ready for this?" Adam asked, his voice tight under the weight of the situation. Elon took a deep breath. "No, but we don't have a choice anymore. We're in this together." The night was charged with tension, humming like a storm about to break. Elon and his team had just received the final batch of documents from the anonymous whistleblower. This was it, the proof they had been waiting for. The files weren't just pieces of data. They were a blueprint to the core of the shadow government that had been manipulating global events for decades. "This is bigger than anything we've ever imagined," Sarah said, her voice trembling as she scrolled through the files. "This is the heart of the system. They've been pulling the strings of every major government and corporation. It's like they've been running the world from behind the curtain." Elon stood silently, processing the gravity of what they were about to do. The documents outlined a vast network of secret organizations working in unison to consolidate power under the guise of philanthropy and public service. Steele wasn't even at the top of the chain. He was a cog in a much larger machine. "How do we even begin to expose something like this?" Adam asked, staring at the files on his screen. "This isn't just one corrupt project. It's an entire infrastructure of power. If we go after this, it's not just Steele we'll be exposing, it's the entire system." Elon exhaled slowly, his mind racing. "We have to hit them where it hurts. We need to show the world how this network operates. We'll need allies, real power players who can amplify the story and expose the people behind it. This isn't just about revealing the truth. It's about changing how the world sees this system." For days, the team worked relentlessly, crafting a strategy to release the documents without compromising their safety. They knew they couldn't just dump all the information at once. It would be dismissed as conspiracy theorizing or, worse, silenced by Steele's influence. They needed to build the case methodically, each revelation stacking on the last until the truth became undeniable. "We're going to need more than just journalists to break this," Elon said during a late-night strategy session. "We need influential figures, politicians, tech leaders, military officials, people who've seen the system up close and are willing to speak out." Sarah nodded. "We've already made contact with a few journalists who specialize in corporate corruption, but we need to expand our reach. This has to be a global effort." Adam chimed in. "We've got former insiders who are willing to go on record. It's not just the whistleblower anymore. We have people who can speak to how the system operates." Elon smiled grimly. "Good. Let's get to work." Over the following weeks, the team built a coalition of truth-tellers, experts in law, international relations, and environmental science. Each brought credibility and reach, lending weight to the evidence. As the documents were verified and corroborated, the story began to take shape, a tale of greed, manipulation, and control on a scale that no one had ever imagined. The day came when they were ready to go public. Elon and his team had prepared a comprehensive dossier detailing the entire operation, backed by irrefutable evidence. They coordinated with media outlets worldwide, ensuring the truth would be delivered in a unified, undeniable wave. This wasn't just about taking down Steele. It was about dismantling an entire system of corruption that had silently dictated the fate of the world. Elon sat before a live stream, his face resolute. "This is a message to every person who has ever been affected by corruption and manipulation from those in power." He began, his voice steady but passionate. "For too long, the truth has been hidden from you. The wealthiest and most powerful have controlled the narrative, the resources, and the systems we rely on. What you are about to see is the result of years of work, years of exposing the lies that have shaped the world we live in." As Elon spoke, the dossier was released to the public. Articles, videos, and live updates flooded the media, laying bare the full extent of the conspiracy. Names were named: politicians, CEOs, and financiers who had funded and profited from Project Helios and other manipulations. The documents revealed layers of influence that spanned every corner of the globe, from governments to tech giants. The reaction was explosive. Social media lit up with outrage. Protests erupted in major cities worldwide, with citizens demanding accountability. Some global leaders tried to discredit the revelations, but the evidence was overwhelming, and the tide of public opinion had already turned. People were no longer willing to accept lies. They wanted change. Steele's network began to fracture. Allies distanced themselves, denying involvement or pleading ignorance. Others scrambled to cover their tracks. But it was too late. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. As Elon watched the events unfold, he knew the fight wasn't over. Steele and the system he represented would retaliate in ways they couldn't yet predict. But for the first time in a long while, Elon felt hope. The world had seen the truth, and in the light of that truth, there was a chance to rebuild. The forces of darkness hadn't won yet, and as long as they hadn't, the fight for a better future would continue. But Elon knew the truth wouldn't be enough. They had to be ready for anything. As the days passed, the team fortified their position, stepping up both digital and physical security. Trust had become a rare and precious commodity. Even within their small circle, no one could afford to let their guard down. The elites, once comfortable operating in the shadows, were now exposed to the world, and that made them more dangerous than ever. They wouldn't just defend their secrets. They'd retaliate with everything they had. The danger wasn't only coming from Steele's network. The global media, which had initially championed their revelations as groundbreaking, began to shift its tone. The counterattack on their credibility was fierce and relentless. Misinformation campaigns flooded social media. Articles questioning the integrity of the whistleblower surfaced, sowing doubt about the authenticity of the documents. "You knew this was coming, right?" Sarah said, scrolling through the latest round of disinformation. "They're calling us frauds, fabricators. The message is clear. They want people to believe this whole thing is an elaborate hoax." Elon clenched his jaw, his frustration barely contained. The smear campaigns were calculated to discredit them, to make people question their work. And sadly, it was working on some. The public, long conditioned to accept comfortable lies, found it easier to dismiss the uncomfortable truth. But Elon knew that over time, the cracks in Steele's narrative would show, and the weight of the evidence would shift the tide back in their favor. "We need to fight back, not just with facts," Elon said, turning to his team. "We need to stay ahead of them. We need to give the world something they can't ignore, something that will make them question everything." The team worked tirelessly to counter the misinformation. They leaned on their network of insiders and influential allies to confirm the authenticity of the documents and expose the deep corruption within Steele's network. The legal battles intensified, but every attempt by the elites to shut them down only revealed their desperation. One key ally in the media, a prominent investigative journalist named Ava Dawson, became a vital voice in their fight. Appearing on television networks and news platforms, Ava used her credibility to amplify the truth. Each time she went on air, more people began to listen. Slowly but surely, public opinion began to shift. The narrative was being reclaimed, one broadcast at a time. But as progress was made, the threats intensified. One night, as Elon returned to the team's safe house after a grueling day of interviews and strategy sessions, he noticed something off. The front door was slightly ajar, and a faint, unfamiliar smell lingered in the air. A cold wave of unease washed over him. "Something's not right," Elon muttered under his breath, his heart racing. He quickly pulled out his phone to check the security feeds. Everything appeared normal, but the sense of being watched gnawed at him. "Elon, look at this," Sarah called out, her face pale. She showed him a series of encrypted messages, threats, warnings, and chilling hints that their security had been compromised. This wasn't an anonymous hacker or a random attack. They were being targeted directly. "Steele's people are here," Elon said grimly. "They're not wasting time anymore. They want us to back down." The team sprang into action. Their first priority was to secure their safety and protect all sensitive information. But they knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. The fight was escalating, and Steel wouldn't stop until they were silenced. "We need to go public with everything we have," Elon said, his tone resolute. "We'll be exposed, but we can't let them intimidate us. We have the truth, and the world needs to hear it." Sarah hesitated for a moment before nodding. "It's risky, but you're right. If we let them win this battle, the truth will never come out. We have to push forward." The team began preparing to release a new set of documents, files that would completely dismantle Steele's network. These weren't just scraps of information. They were the final pieces of the puzzle, revealing the full scope of Steele's influence and his nefarious plans for the future. But just as they were about to go public, they were blindsided. A massive cyber attack hit their systems, far more sophisticated than anything they had faced before. This wasn't an attempt to steal information. It was a coordinated effort to wipe out everything they had built. "This is it," Adam said, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "They're trying to erase us." Elon's mind raced as he watched the attack unfold in real time. "Hold the line. We can't let them take everything. Get those files out now." The hours that followed were a blur of chaos and tension. The team worked frantically, countering the assault and securing their data. It felt like an impossible battle, but they managed to push the final files through just as the attack reached its peak. The documents were out. Steele's empire, his shadow network, was exposed for the world to see. Elon sat back, a fleeting sense of relief washing over him. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, they had dealt a decisive blow. The truth was out there now, and no amount of lies or misinformation could bury it. As he looked at his team, exhausted but resolute, Elon knew this was only the beginning. The world would know the truth, but Steele and his network wouldn't go down without a fight. They had poked the hornet's nest, and now the swarm was coming. But Elon wasn't afraid. The fight for the future had begun, and he was ready for whatever came next. But Elon knew this victory was precarious, balanced on a knife's edge. Every revelation had come at a cost. They were now fully exposed, vulnerable, and Steele wouldn't rest until they were destroyed. The truth was out, but the battle had only just begun. The world had changed irrevocably. Steele's vast network of manipulation and control was no longer a secret, and the tectonic shift in global power structures was beginning. However, the forces that had held the world in their grip for so long wouldn't let go without a fight. The media was ablaze with the story. Major news outlets scrambled to cover the revelations, but the initial shock quickly gave way to a coordinated smear campaign aimed at discrediting Elon and his team. They were no longer whistleblowers. They were being framed as enemies of the state, radicals intent on destabilizing the world order. "Look at this," Sarah said, holding up her tablet, her voice tinged with frustration. "They're calling us terrorists now. They're linking us to some kind of global sabotage operation. The narrative is shifting against us. They're trying to make sure no one believes what we've uncovered." Elon clenched his fists, his frustration boiling over. It's the same playbook they always use. Discredit the messenger so people stop listening to the message. Adam, who had been quietly monitoring the situation, spoke up. "It's not just the media. Government agencies are getting involved. Some of the most powerful nations are moving to contain the fallout. If we don't act fast, they'll silence us before we can do anything more." The weight of their situation pressed heavily on the room, but Elon remained resolute. "We knew this was coming. They're not going to give up power easily. But the world has seen the truth now, and we have to make sure it doesn't get buried." For the next several days, the team worked tirelessly to stay one step ahead of their adversaries. They shifted communications to encrypted channels, avoided public appearances, and relied on their most trusted allies to counter the growing disinformation campaign. Every move they made, every piece of evidence they released, was scrutinized by both the media and the authorities. The backlash was brutal. False narratives painted them as fabricators, claiming they had manufactured evidence or colluded with foreign powers to destabilize governments. Social media swarmed with hate and accusations. People who had once cheered for their courage now questioned their motives. "We need to turn the narrative back in our favor," Sarah said, exhaustion evident in her voice as she scrolled through the barrage of online hate. "If we don't, we're going to be lost in the noise." Elon stood before the group, his expression grim but unwavering. "We can't let them control the conversation. They've thrown everything they have at us, but the truth hasn't changed. We just need to find a way to break through their wall of lies." Then, just as it seemed they were on the verge of being overwhelmed, something unexpected happened. A group of former insiders, people who had once been part of Steele's inner circle, came forward. They had seen the storm brewing and were now ready to speak out. The first was Marcus Chun, a high-ranking executive who had worked closely with Steele. Appearing on Ava Dawson's investigative news segment, he was visibly nervous but determined. Marcus not only confirmed the leaked documents' authenticity, but went further, revealing personal details about Steele's operations. "I've seen this with my own eyes," Marcus said, his voice trembling but resolute. "Elon Musk and his team didn't make this up. What they've uncovered is exactly what I witnessed. And if we don't stop this, we're all going to pay the price." Marcus's revelations opened the floodgates. Other insiders began to come forward, some anonymously, some through secure channels, all with corroborating stories. They described the cold, calculated nature of Steele's empire, the dark rooms where decisions were made, and the names of those involved. Each account added weight to the growing mountain of evidence. Momentum swung back in Elon's favor. With every new whistleblower, the narrative began to shift. Public opinion, once teetering on doubt, started to rally behind the truth. People took to the streets, demanding accountability. Protests erupted in major cities as the public rejected the smear campaigns. But Steele wasn't going to let his empire crumble without a fight. Behind the scenes, he mobilized his vast resources, legal teams, private security forces, and political allies. He was pulling every string he had, working furiously to bury the story and silence those who dared speak out. Elon sat with Sarah and Adam late into the night, the glow of their screens casting shadows across the room. "Steele's on the defensive," Adam said, tapping at his tablet. "He's using every legal avenue he can to go after Marcus and anyone else who speaks out. But the public isn't buying his narrative anymore. People are demanding answers." "He's desperate," Sarah added, "and that makes him dangerous. We can't let our guard down, not for a second." Elon nodded, his expression resolute. "We're exposed now, and he knows it. But we're also closer than ever to dismantling his network. We have to stay focused. The truth is out there, and the world is finally starting to see it." The fight was far from over, but for the first time, Elon felt a glimmer of hope. Steele's empire, once untouchable, was beginning to crack. The forces of darkness were reeling, and the light of truth was shining through the cracks. Yet Elon knew they had to remain vigilant. Steele wasn't done fighting, and neither were they. The battle for the future had only just begun. "But we can't afford to stop now," Elon replied, his voice filled with determination. "We have the truth on our side, and the support of those brave enough to speak out. We need to hold the line, ensure Steele's lies never take root again." Sarah met his gaze, a glint of resolve in her eyes. "If we push too hard, they might escalate things even further. We're not just fighting Steele anymore. We're up against a system that's been entrenched for decades. We need to prepare for what's next." The situation was growing more dire. The team understood the stakes. They couldn't stop, but the path ahead was perilous. Steele wouldn't relinquish his empire without a fight. The only question was, how far would he go to protect it? As the pressure mounted, Elon recognized their battle was no longer about exposing corruption. It had become a fight for survival. They were challenging a force that had operated unchecked for decades, and now, for the first time, it was being pushed back. The world had seen the cracks in the system, but the true test was whether humanity would rise to confront it, and if Elon's team could endure long enough to see real change. The heat intensified from all sides. Steele, the puppet master behind a vast global conspiracy, was no longer lurking in the shadows. He was in full damage control, deploying every resource to discredit Elon and his team. Yet, for every attack he launched, another ally seemed to emerge, rallying to support the truth. The tide was beginning to shift, but the cost was high. Elon and his team had been forced into hiding, their every move tracked and scrutinized by reporters, government officials, and shadowy figures operating in the dark recesses of the digital world. The world had been shaken to its core, but now Elon's team bore the weight of that change. "We exposed them," Sarah said, her voice carrying a mixture of relief and apprehension. "But now, we're dealing with the fallout. Steele isn't going to back down, and his network is massive. Every step we take from here is a gamble." Adam, leaning over a cluttered table, sifted through documents, his expression tense. "I've been analyzing the latest intel. The media's starting to spin this as a crisis of confidence. They're framing us as destabilizers, questioning whether the world is ready for this level of change. Meanwhile, Steele's using his government contacts to push things even further." Elon exhaled, running a hand through his hair. He wasn't a stranger to controversy, but this fight felt different. It wasn't about one man or one company. It was about tearing apart the fabric of a system that had held humanity in its grip for far too long. And yet, the resistance he faced only deepened his resolve. "We can't let them control the narrative," Elon said, his voice hardening. "We have the truth, and we need to give the world something they can't ignore. This isn't just about us. It's about the future of humanity. We have to keep moving forward." Yet questions of trust lingered in their minds. Could they truly rely on the insiders who had turned against Steele? And what would happen when the final pieces of the puzzle were revealed? The stakes had never been higher. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Ava Dawson, the journalist who had been instrumental in amplifying their story, had been working quietly behind the scenes. She had garnered support from influential global figures, not just ordinary leaders, but individuals who had once been part of the very elite establishment they were fighting. "I've spoken to people in positions of real power," Ava said during a tense video call. "They're scared, Elon. They see what's happening, and they know they're next if this spirals out of control. They're ready to support us, but it's going to come with a cost. We'll need to be strategic." Elon nodded. He knew allies were crucial in a fight of this magnitude. They needed people who could create ripples in the political, financial, and media worlds. But he also understood the stakes. Steele wouldn't let go of his empire without unleashing every weapon at his disposal. The situation grew more volatile. The team was under constant surveillance. Every call, every message, every movement was a potential vulnerability. But in the chaos, they uncovered a crucial weakness: cracks in Steele's armor. His network wasn't as impervious as it seemed. Late one night, Adam received an encrypted message that made his pulse quicken. "The system has been infiltrated," it read. "We have the evidence you need to dismantle it. But act quickly. They know you're coming." Elon's mind raced. This could be it, he said, gripping the edge of the table. This might be our chance to hit them where it hurts. But we have to tread carefully, Sarah cautioned. If we move too fast, we'll put ourselves and our allies in even greater danger. This isn't just Steele's network anymore. It's global, entrenched, and lethal. Then we do it smart, Elon replied, his determination unwavering. We leverage everything we have and make sure we're ready for whatever comes next. In the days that followed, the team prepared meticulously. The new evidence was explosive, exposing deeper corruption within global institutions, a covert network spanning finance, politics, and media. It was proof that the system's control extended far beyond Steele's empire. But as they prepared for their next move, a new crisis struck. Ava Dawson, their trusted ally, called in a panic. "I've been compromised," she said, her voice trembling. "They're coming after me, threatening my family, pressuring my contacts to abandon your story. I don't know how much longer I can hold out." Elon's heart sank. Ava had been a cornerstone of their fight. Losing her would leave the team isolated. "You've done more than enough," he said urgently. "Get to safety. Lay low for now. We'll handle the rest. We can't let them intimidate us." The pressure was reaching a breaking point. The team was under relentless attack. Physical threats, legal actions, cyber assaults, and media smears. But Elon knew retreat wasn't an option. They had come too far, exposed too much. The battle wasn't just for justice, it was for the future itself. And no matter the cost, they would see it through to the end. Amid the chaos, they had discovered a critical piece that could dismantle Steele's empire, a whistleblower from within Steele's network feeding them vital intelligence. "We need to act now," Elon said, his voice steady but firm. "Steele is coming for us, but this isn't about us anymore. It's about the truth, and we can't stop until the whole world sees the full picture." They had reached a point of no return. Every moment carried immense risk, and each decision felt like stepping onto a tightrope. The slightest misstep could send them tumbling into oblivion. But stopping now wasn't an option. With Ava under threat and the walls closing in, Elon understood that their next move was crucial. They were at the tipping point. One wrong step could unravel everything they had worked so hard to expose. The latest intelligence came in the form of an encrypted package that detailed Steele's financial operations. It was their most significant weapon yet, a bombshell capable of exposing the entire machinery behind Steele's empire. But with such high stakes came even greater risks. The more they revealed, the more dangerous their enemies would become. Elon stood with Sarah, Adam, and their trusted allies in a high-security location, their faces etched with determination as they reviewed the data. The room buzzed with tension. Everyone knew the gravity of what they were about to unleash. The air was heavy, thick with anticipation. "This is it," Elon said, his tone resolute. "We release this information, but it has to be done in a way they can't spin. It has to be undeniable." Sarah nodded, her eyes sharp with focus. "It's not just about what we release. It's about how we do it. If we let them control the narrative again, we'll lose everything. This has to hit them on all fronts." Adam agreed. "We've got allies in media, finance, and even the legal world. If we coordinate this perfectly, we can break Steele's network before he has a chance to retaliate." Elon's mind raced as he pieced the plan together. From the start, he had known this fight wasn't just about one man, it was about taking down an entire system. And now, the moment had come to do just that. "We need to create a chain reaction," Elon said, his determination unshaken. "We'll release the documents and flood every media platform simultaneously. The public needs to see the full scope of what we've uncovered." Then we'll take the fight directly to the institutions that have allowed this to fester. The team sprang into action, working tirelessly to ensure their plan was airtight. Their mission was daring but clear: create a spectacle so monumental that Steele and his allies couldn't hope to cover it up. They would release damning financial records, expose corrupt politicians, and reveal the connections between Steele and multinational corporations. Time was their greatest enemy. It was a race against the clock, and there was no room for error. Elon stood by the window, staring out over the darkened cityscape. The weight of their decisions bore down on him. "We're at a precipice," he muttered to himself. "If we fail, everything collapses. If we succeed, the world changes forever." As final preparations were underway, an urgent message came through from one of their inside sources. The words were chilling. "Asterisk, they know you're coming. There are eyes everywhere. Move quickly, asterisk." The room fell silent as the gravity of the warning set in. Steele was aware of their every move, and time was running out. "We act now," Elon said, his voice cold but resolute. "Release everything. Let's do this." At precisely the same moment, multiple platforms around the globe began broadcasting the bombshell information the team had compiled: financial transactions, secret meetings, photos, and videos. Everything Steele had desperately tried to keep hidden was now exposed. The documents hit the airwaves like a shock wave, and social media erupted as people shared the revelations in real time. News outlets scrambled to report on the story, and for the first time in weeks, the public wasn't just watching, they were reacting. The dam had burst. But just as the truth began spreading like wildfire, Steele's network retaliated with unprecedented force. A coordinated cyber attack crippled websites, hijacked social media accounts, and compromised critical infrastructure across several countries. It was a calculated move to erase evidence and sow chaos. "Stay calm," Sarah said, her voice steady as she monitored the chaos unfolding on her screen. "We knew this was coming. He's trying to cover his tracks." Elon nodded, his heart pounding. "We anticipated this, but we can't let him win. He has power, yes, but we have the truth. And that's something he can't control." As the hours passed, the situation grew more intense. Protests erupted worldwide as people, enraged by the betrayal, demanded accountability. The tide of public opinion was shifting, but the backlash from Steele's allies was equally fierce. Loyalists within his network fought tooth and nail to protect him, launching legal battles and smear campaigns. Then, a turning point came. A group of high-ranking politicians from major nations publicly denounced Steele, announcing formal investigations into his operations. For the first time, cracks were visible in Steele's once impenetrable empire. But the battle was far from over. Steele's remaining allies were relentless, prepared to do whatever it took to protect their interests. The fight had moved to the courts and the global stage, where every word and action carried immense weight. "This isn't over," Adam said grimly, scanning the latest developments. "Steele's going to fight harder than ever. He'll try to tear us apart piece by piece." Elon met Adam's gaze, his expression firm. "We've come too far to back down now. This is just the beginning. The world knows the truth, and now we finish what we started." The battle for the future was in full swing. Steele's network was vast and dangerous, but it was also built on lies. And now, for the first time, the world was waking up. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. But as the team finalized their preparations, Elon knew one thing: this was the moment of truth. The evidence they now held wasn't just explosive, it was transformative. The revelations were no longer confined to corporate greed or political manipulation. They reached into the darkest corners of human corruption. This wasn't just a fight against Steele. It was a battle for the soul of humanity. The world outside was in turmoil, protests erupting in every major city as people demanded accountability. Social media was a wildfire of hashtags and demands, and the public's fury grew louder with every passing hour. Yet Steele's network, though crumbling, was far from powerless. He still had allies in high places, figures who would stop at nothing to preserve the status quo. In the secure war room, tension was palpable. Elon stood at the head of the table, his team gathered around him, each member knowing the weight of the decision they were about to make. "This is our moment," Elon said, his voice calm but filled with determination. "We've brought them to the edge, but now we need to push them over." Sarah glanced up from her laptop, her fingers pausing on the keys. "Steele's people are still spinning the narrative," she said. "They're flooding the media with disinformation, claiming the documents are fake. They're even accusing us of fabricating the whistleblower's identity." "We expected this," Elon replied, his jaw tightening. "But we have the truth on our side. We need to release the information in a way that leaves no room for doubt, no time for them to counter." Adam leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Steele's desperation is showing. There are whispers of him planning a false flag event, something to turn public opinion back in his favor. If we don't act soon, he might succeed in regaining control." Elon's gaze swept across the room. "We can't let him make the first move. We release the documents, all of them, and we do it now. Every second we wait gives him more time to strike." Sarah nodded, her voice steady. "Our network is ready. Journalists, activists, and insiders are all standing by. Once we hit go, the information will be everywhere, every platform, every outlet. But we need to brace ourselves. Steele won't just sit back and watch his empire burn." Adam's face was grim. "We're ready, Elon. But once this goes live, there's no turning back. Steele will come at us with everything he has left." Elon took a deep breath, looking out the window at the darkened skyline. The city below seemed calm, but he knew better. The world was teetering on the brink of change, and their actions in the next few hours would decide which way it fell. "We push forward," he said, his voice resolute. "This is about more than Steele. This is about exposing a system that's been rotting from the inside for decades. We finish what we started." The team moved with precision, each person carrying out their role with unwavering focus. Encrypted messages were sent, final checks were made, and the evidence was uploaded to servers across the globe. As the clock struck midnight, the information went live. The impact was immediate. News outlets lit up with breaking reports, each one dissecting the damning evidence. Social media erupted as millions shared the revelations, demanding justice. The documents detailed Steele's involvement in illegal arms deals, human trafficking, and widespread corruption, tying him to some of the most powerful figures in the world. The public response was explosive. Protests intensified, with people flooding the streets in numbers that hadn't been seen in decades. But Steele wasn't going down without a fight. Within hours, his network retaliated. A massive cyber attack targeted the servers hosting the documents, and misinformation flooded social media, attempting to discredit the leaks. News channels loyal to Steele spun the narrative, calling the documents fabricated and labeling Elon and his team as radicals bent on destabilizing the world. In the war room, the tension was razor-sharp. "They're hitting us hard," Sarah said, her eyes glued to the monitors. "But the documents are everywhere now. Even if they take down some platforms, the truth is out there." Elon's face was calm, but his mind was racing. "Stay focused," he said. "This is what we prepared for. They're trying to overwhelm us, but they can't erase what the world has already seen." The team doubled down, reaching out to their allies in the media and legal communities. High-ranking politicians began calling for investigations, and several countries announced formal inquiries into Steele's operations. The tide was turning, but the fight was far from over. As the hours stretched into days, the cracks in Steele's empire widened. More whistleblowers came forward, providing additional evidence that painted an even darker picture of his global network. But the more they exposed, the more dangerous their enemies became. One evening, as the team reviewed their progress, an encrypted message arrived. It was brief but chilling. *, you've gone too far. Stop now, or face the consequences. *. Elon read the message aloud, his voice steady. He's desperate. He knows he's losing. Sarah looked at him, her expression serious. But desperate men are the most dangerous. We need to be ready for anything. Elon nodded. We've come too far to back down now. The world is watching, and we're not going to stop until we've dismantled this system piece by piece. The battle was far from over, but one thing was clear. The truth had ignited a revolution, and there was no turning back. The fight to reclaim the future had only just begun. The momentum was undeniable, but Elon and his team knew they couldn't relax, not even for a moment. Steele's retaliation was far from over, and his vast network of loyalists and resources posed a constant threat. Every step forward felt like it could also be their last. Elon stood at the center of their makeshift war room, his face a mask of focus. "We're not just fighting Steele anymore," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We're taking on an entire system that's been built to protect people like him. If we falter now, everything we've worked for will be for nothing." Sarah, stationed near a bank of monitors, turned to face him. "The protests are growing by the hour," she reported. "The world is watching, but Steele's people are pushing harder than ever to regain control. We're seeing coordinated efforts to flood social media with disinformation, everything from fake documents to claims that this is all a foreign operation." Adam, still poring over financial data, added grimly, "Steele's preparing to shift assets. He's trying to make it look like his empire is clean, moving money through offshore accounts and shell corporations. If we don't act fast, he'll erase his financial trail before we can nail him." Elon's gaze sharpened. "Then we move faster. We have the evidence. We have the truth. But we can't let Steele dictate the pace. We have to stay ahead of him." The team sprang into action, their efforts focused on three fronts: ensuring the integrity of the leaked documents, rallying their growing coalition of allies, and countering Steele's relentless propaganda. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Every misstep, every delay, could mean the difference between victory and defeat. Then came the next shockwave. An encrypted message landed in their inbox, a video confession from a high-ranking member of Steele's inner circle. The whistleblower, their face partially obscured but voice steady, laid bare Steele's darkest secrets. They detailed clandestine meetings, illegal operations, and the methods Steele had used to manipulate governments and suppress dissent. "This is the final piece," Sarah whispered as the team watched the recording. "If this goes public, there's no coming back for him." Elon's jaw tightened. "It's not just about Steele anymore."